I think you can see too far. I look out there and then I can't see the potato that I'm planting. And after a bit, it doesn't seem to matter whether I plant it or not. Welcome to Morally Offensive, the most blessed of all podcasts. I'm Bill.
I'm Jess.
And today we are talking about a proto-nunsploitation and Technicolor classic that was condemned by the Legion of Decency and banned in Ireland.
This is a podcast about the films condemned or considered morally offensive by the Catholic Church.
We both grew up Catholic, and now we are not for reasons, but we are still fascinated by the religion that raised us. The films we cover are selected from the official film review lists of the Legion of Decency, rest in peace, and the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. I am a motion graphics designer, editor, and DJ.
And I'm an instructional designer with a PhD in film and television studies.
And together, we are on a journey to watch every film condemned or considered morally offensive. Dalila, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Jess, are you ready to dive into Act 2 of this movie?
I'm ready. This is where things start to get weird.
This is where the good stuff starts to happen.
Yeah.
If you tuned in for this one and didn't tune us out after the first episode, you've waited for the right time. This is good stuff. In Act 2, the nuns find themselves unable to focus in their current surroundings. For example, Sister Philippa stops planting vegetables to plant flowers because the scenery is too beautiful, while Sister Clodagh is plagued by vivid, erotic flashbacks of her past life in Ireland. Soon, the young general, a local prince doused in a pungent perfume called Black Narcissus, introduces temptation into the convent. He begins an affair with Conchi, a local girl, further mocking the nun's vow of chastity. A rivalry begins between Clodagh and Ruth as they are drawn to Mr. Dean's rugged, masculine presence. While Clodagh fights her feelings with rigid professionalism, Sister Ruth becomes increasingly unstable, convinced Clodagh is trying to steal him. The act concludes with Sister Ruth's total psychological collapse. She stops eating, ignores her duties, and begins to experience terrifying hallucinations, culminating in her decision to officially renounce the order. Now, we addressed some of this in the last episode, but I think it's worth kind of talking a little bit about the Clodagh, Dean, Ruth love triangle here. Because I think initially Clodagh is annoyed by Mr. Dean more than anything.
Right.
Which kind of taps into this classic trope, right? Of like, she's annoyed with him now, but she'll come around to his charms eventually.
I mean, he's a trigger, I feel like, to her past, right?
Well, and maybe she sees something in him too, along with the young prince, reminding her of the guy who left her for Michigan.
Yes.
Fucking Michigan. My home state.
Of all
Wait, does he go to Michigan?
Yeah, he goes to Michigan. That's like the whole deal.
Yeah.
I laugh every time I watch this movie.
Well,
Who involved in the creation of this film is from Michigan and didn't like pop up with anything. And I'm like, all right, just random picking on a map.
Detroit.
Plus her boyfriend. I mean, he's obviously a complete ass.
No, he sucks.
Yeah.
What was his
he
name?
sucks.
I don't remember his name. It sucked though.
He's a baby. He's a little baby narcissist and very concerned with his own importance. I guess going to Michigan is going to fulfill all his ambitions.
His name is Con. Literally C-O-N is his name. So tells you everything you need to know about this guy.
Yes.
He's literally a con man. I'll be here all night, everybody.
Oh, God.
Oh, my gosh. And again, like, I don't know if I see the parallel to Mr. Dean with him as much as, like, I guess it's just because Sister Clodagh says the young general reminds her of Con because, in that final scene with the young general, he's like, I've given up I was too ambitious and now I'm just going to be like my family, basically just a pillar of masculinity and power. And it's just hilarious because he's still super narcissistic and ambitious and
a fancy lad.
I don't know.
Yeah, 100%.
And a fancy lad. Yes, totally fancy lad.
I feel like
maybe that's like, yeah, Mr. Dean is not a fancy lad. I mean, he needs some fashion guidance, honestly. He really does.
I will say, though, Mr. Dean's entrance on that little horse or whatever it is one of the best character introductions of cinema.
He's like...
It's so ridiculous.
The shorts, can we talk about the shorts?
Yeah.
It's
And the hat.
just really appalling.
Because it's like,
I mean,
weird
Peter Pan.
Yeah, like he's still, it's very childlike, but he's caught in this like liminal space between East and West. Like he hasn't quite conformed to the local dress, but
it's a weird mix of items, I would say.
But he's not vain.
Right, expected.
I do like his coffee pot with his monkey, though. That's fun.
Sure.
His like bubbling coffee pot situation.
Yes.
I like that. That was good.
He's not vain. And there is like this thing about the jewelry in the flashback. We should talk about it when we talk about color, but like the emeralds that Sister Clodagh is going to get when she married Khan, and then Conchi's whole obsession with like the necklaces of the general, like this vanity, that's like the jewels associated with those men. And Mr. Dean is just kind of like hasn't taken a shower in a long time.
Right.
He's wearing these old shorts. He's on a little pony. He's,
Well, and again, I hate this implication that this is all because of the environment he's in, because it's kind of insulting to the people who live in this village.
Yeah.
In the context of this time, it's this kind of offensive idea that he's, quote, gone native.
Sure.
Right.
And that's a common trope during this. We have to remember there are common tropes during this period that they're pulling from that are offensive in our modern day. That is what they're doing here with Dean, I think, is just saying like, he gave in to the passion of the jungle.
Sure.
Which is a problematic thing to say.
Yeah.
So it's just a little problematic.
I wish this movie like used nature to explain this and not so much like Picnic at Hanging Rock does this really well, where there obviously is the implications of Aboriginal people having been there, but they never make that a thing. They never say that. Mm-hmm. It's more about the nature, the rock formation that they're exploring, but they never explicitly do what this movie is doing with that. So anyway, that's almost a whole podcast by itself talking about like the history of this stuff.
I mean, if Dalila wants to talk about lighting, I think lighting in this act is there's a shift. It's so integral and important.
The lighting is just so unusual in terms of going back to Powell saying sometimes color and theme is more important than story. It's like the use of color, the use of lighting to tell the story, and also to tell us about the psychology of the characters. The color of the film, like there's this beautiful, the flashbacks have a certain particular feeling and color and look. And one of the flashbacks shows Sister Ruth putting on this emerald necklace, and she's wearing this green dress. There's like this intensely saturated green, and the lighting on her face, the lighting is concentrated on her necklace, and the top half of her face is in shadow, which is really unusual. I mean, even for today, to have like the bottom half of your face be lit and the top half of your face be in shadow, it's very unusual. And it's not only drawing attention to the necklace, but it's saying something psychologically about her at that moment. There's a famous still of her where there's a shadow of a cross over her face.
Yes.
Which, talk about lighting to tell a story. And then in the building up to the climax with Sister Ruth, all the red, there's this beautiful shot of her sitting at the window, and the servant boy brings in a glass of milk that she's supposed to drink, and she throws it out of the window. It's sort of like the lighting indicating that she's starting to lose her mind, with this sort of very red, like the quote unquote motivation for it is the sunset, but it's so exaggerated. Like there's these reds and purples and pinks and golds in the frame, where that's just incredibly modern. Like now it's really common in film to have mixed lighting or mixed colored lighting. All my film students, for example, are trying to use colored lighting because of what they saw in Euphoria. But yeah, now we have like mixed colored lighting, like Moonlight, for example, but used like extreme colored lighting. It's very popular. But even like now, having seen a lot of things that use that colored lighting, this film is like shocking in its use of those sort of mixed colors.
Right.
There are shots in here that feel more modern than they are, I think, at times, especially when you compare them to Technicolor films from the same era, especially made in Hollywood. So many Hollywood Technicolor films look very flat in the way they were shot because they just would light them brightly, overlight, just to make sure they got the exposure right. And Cardiff was almost lighting this like a film noir at times.
I mean, he was using diffusion filters, which most like that was contraindicated when you're using Technicolor, right? And people were scared to do that, using gels, using diffusion filters, right? To create this sort of like, which on a side note, I could listen to you can talk about lighting in Euphoria. One of my chapters in my dissertation was televisual aesthetics in Euphoria and how
Nice.
like it just poisoned cinematography with color, right? For emotion, right? Like we know German expressionism happened, right? Which we can see an influence of start to like creep in this act going into the third. So like we see these white and blue hues, and like Dalila said, we're adding in these oranges and red hues are starting to come in. And what is this saying about like the psychological state? Because again, in interviews, Powell's talking about this as psychological lighting, or he calls it in one like the glow of memory, right? When we're going back for these flashbacks, and like you picked out such a great scene of like highlighting that necklace. We kind of have the diffusion and like this like chiaroscuro being created, which generally we'd see like half of a face, right? Not just like obfuscating an entire face to focus on like also the décolletage of a woman, right? And the jewels.
And then in the scene with where Sister Clodagh goes to Sister Ruth's bedroom and confronts her and tries to get her to like chill out.
Right. You can swear on here, by the way, if you want to. It is allowed.
Calm the fuck down. And Sister Ruth puts on the lipstick that was cut out. But there's lighting on Sister Ruth where, again, like the top half of her face is in shadow. That's very unusual and interesting, and saying something about the psychology of her at that moment.
Absolutely. And I think like today it's become pretty common practice, right, to kind of have some sort of juxtaposition maybe of like lighting or cinematography when we're having to differentiate flashbacks, dream sequences, something like that. And so we see that with that sort of more soft focused kind of diffuse lighting in those scenes.
I think one of my favorite choices is during the Emeralds, the dream sequence, she runs out the door to meet Khan, and she runs into only she's lit when she gets outside that door, and the rest is complete darkness. And she just runs into the darkness. It's the most jarring thing the first time you see it, and it's amazing.
This film is just a masterclass in flashbacks. I mean, in the match cutting, and the psychological cue of the flashback, and the lighting of the flashback. I mean, so many films are just complete ham hands at flashbacks, and this is just incredibly masterful in cueing and lighting those flashbacks.
If you want to escape bad flashback tropes, watch this movie. I would recommend, because it offers so many choices, so many ways to deal with it without falling into the classic sort of stereotypes.
Oh yeah, and even like just to talk about sound for a second with the flashbacks, the switch, right? The musical accompaniment switch to more like harp-like string instruments, like more traditional kind of Irish
or quiet chorals.
Right.
There's a lot of things in that regard. Well, there's the Lule My Liking sequence where during the Christmas mass, Mr. Dean comes by, but when it goes into the flashback, it goes into a different arrangement of Lule My Liking, which has more pleasant voices in it, which has those harps, and it's playing off this like well-known, at least I think at this time, well-known Christmas carol or hymn. And so it plays off those emotions too. A lot of audiences at the time would have known that song. I think a lot of less people know that one now, but back in the day, people knew it.
Sure,
so you're playing into the nostalgia of the audience at that point.
Again, that pleasantness of like how that sort of diegetic and non-diegetic sound that we're playing with, and how that, you know, the musical accompaniment is transitioning in those flashbacks is a greater juxtaposition to like going back to the kind of present storyline where we talked about kind of the whistling kind of like wind or breeze in the first act too. That's becoming a little more howling, a little more like whistling, and a little more intrusive.
Yep.
In this act.
A really great set design choice are the curtains that are everywhere.
Yes.
Because they get more violent in their blowing from the wind and all that stuff. So you get that sense of frenzy going on. So let's move on to Act 3. I would say Act 3 really starts with the unintentional death of a child who dies after Sister Honey kind of takes mercy on the mother and gives her castor oil just to kind of calm the baby. And she kind of blames herself for killing the baby. The locals think that whatever she gave them killed the baby because I guess they don't quite understand the medicine that the nuns are working with. And so there's this idea that the nuns killed the baby. And now the local population is turning against them. Mr. Dean warns them about this. In an infamous sequence, Sister Ruth discards her white habit for a provocative red dress and applies bright red lipstick. She tracks down Mr. Dean to confess her love. But when he rejects her and calls for Sister Clodagh, Ruth's jealousy turns to murderous, homicidal rage. As Clodagh rings the morning bell on the edge of an 8,000-foot cliff, Ruth lunges from the shadows to push her over. After a desperate struggle, Ruth loses her footing and falls to her death into the abyss below. Broken and humbled, the remaining nuns abandon their mission. As they ride away in the rain, the holy man remains sitting in the palace. The mountain has officially reclaimed its territory. Now, this third act is really I think this is the whole reason to watch this movie. Not that the other stuff isn't great, but this is what we're building to the whole time. The last 30 minutes are some amazing cinema, I think. Dalila, I'm curious for your take on Sister Ruth's psychology in this third act and how it's handled, how it's dated, how it's aged poorly, but also what's good about how this sequence plays out.
Visually, this sequence has influenced so many other films and filmmakers that came after it. You have almost the film turning into horror at this time with the confrontation between Sister Ruth and Sister Clodagh. You have these kind of Dutch angles, these quick kind of shots, quick cuts, the suspense, the sort of shocking shot of Sister Ruth exiting from the palace as she goes to try to kill Sister Clodagh, and she's wearing red. There's this red lighting. Her eyes are rimmed in red. It's very sort of iconic horror melodrama visual iconography. Very, very iconic iconography. And then I think these filmmakers are really interested in thematic material, and so thematically, the idea of this person that has been split, their psyche is split. You've got these. It's interesting, the casting. Whether or not Powell cast, Sister Ruth because he was having an affair with the actor, when I watched the film, especially in Habit, Deborah Kerr and Kathleen Byron do not look dissimilar. They look fairly similar, and I think that whether or not that's intentional, I think it works really well thematically. Thinking about if this is a comment on individual psychology, and you have this kind of split between your emotional, sexual life and, a monastic existence, the sequence works, it's masterful. In terms of how it's badly dated, I don't think Byron's performance ages well. And I think part of that is the idea that I was talking about before of, how female sexuality has traditionally been viewed at that time, early modern psychology. It's this idea of hysteria, women were hysterical, sort of a broad term, women are hysterical. And so women's emotions are hysterical, and the performance really plays into that. Undifferentiated, generalized hysteria, which is not a diagnosis, is not very psychologically astute.
It makes her kind of a villain with no sympathy. I know her situation, and I have sympathy because of the context, but the way it's...
We don't have any situation. Yeah. Sister Ruth is just basically, she's termed as difficult. She's basically she's a crazy woman. It's not very helpful.
Oh, I meant the situation I meant was her being a nun and not really belonging there. But other than that, her behavior is just, she's being punished for her personality, essentially.
Well, and wasn't the main takeaway from the US cut version that she really came off as villainous in that one versus, right? A lot less sympathetic.
Yeah, which, it could be great. It could be really interesting. We're just not told that much about her. She's a little bit of a wonder. The one thing that is interesting to me is that Sister Clodagh was told, I think by the mother that gave her the assignment, give a little bit of your importance to Sister Ruth. And we see this scene where Sister Ruth is bloodied, and she's tried to care for a patient, even though she should have called in a nun that is more experienced, because she wants a sense of importance. She wants a sense of that she matters to somebody. And she's basically, I think, a very there is, okay, I'm talking myself out of it. There is Mr. Dean says something kind to her, and then she completely latches on to him because she's such an unloved, obviously abused person that, one little mention of kindness, she's attached herself to him. And then Sister Clodagh is shown as failing in terms of her own pride. She wants to be important. She wants to be the boss. She doesn't want to, give any of that importance to Sister Ruth. But it's ultimately, I mean, that's interesting, but I don't find it very satisfying, or perhaps it's also Byron's performance that I don't think is very modern in terms of it just feels a little unspecific and it's generalized
it's
hysteria.
Very one note. It's very, and that might be the direction from Powell as well. He may have pushed her to do a more villainous, because I've seen her she's in the small back room and she's great. So I think in this, it could be a director note, it might not be her choice in that matter. I'd like to see more of her actually struggling and just kind of being like frustrated by the situation, more so than her switching from like, she's putting up with it. She's angry. She's going to kill people. I want some of that middle ground of just like, why is she feeling these things? Do you think more of a desperation would make it work better, Dalila? Like just like her reacting to the way she's being treated? Do we need to see more? I mean, I guess it's hard to fix something that inherently is like a bad idea, but I'm just curious, like how you modernize it, or if we need a whole rewrite on this thing.
She's just more of a theme than she is a character. And I think you could say the same thing for Conchi.
Conchi, same thing.
The film spends a lot of time with Sister Clodagh and spends a lot of time with Mr. Dean in terms of, developing their psychology, but not a lot of time with the other characters.
And I like the complexity of Sister Clodagh. That is something I really appreciate about this movie. I think she's an interesting character. I think it's handled way more subtly. I think of like the ending of this movie where she's getting ready to go and she and Mr. Dean takes her hand and they both just kind of pause. Nothing happens, but we feel it. And I thought that was great because it doesn't she doesn't give into it, but that tension is shown in a way that's very subtle.
Right.
And that could also be Deborah Kerr's performance and Farrar's performance in that moment too. I mean, this Dalila being a director, like everything on set is like determining what goes into a movie, and the actors bring something, you bring something, the screenwriter brings something, art direction. So
I love that you mentioned that the ending moment of the movie, because it is incredibly erotic, which is amazing. That he takes her hand. I just rewatched this movie with I describe her as my godmother, but she's like a mother figure, and she's in her 80s, and she just, a woman in her 80s, she just loved that moment of him taking her hand. Like it's incredibly romantic. This sort of unrequited affection between them. In terms of Mr. Dean, he says to Sister Ruth, she's like, "You love Sister Clodagh." He says, "I don't love anybody." And then it's only when Sister Clodagh is leaving that he allows himself to express any kind of affection for her. So he's fucked up in his own way.
Such a man. I don't show any emotion. I don't admit to anything I'm feeling.
No, such a Catholic man.
Well, that too. I mean, yeah, but men in general, we're a problem.
But it's a great moment. And then he had predicted that he would give them till the rains come, and then the final, scene is like there's the rains that are happening. We see a close-up shot of the rain. We see him sort of looking back at her in the rain, and the rain is like the release of this emotion that's been pent up. And also, like, you going back to, you were saying, Bill, the theme of nature and the power of nature. It's definitely like connected to that as well. Maybe one of the ways in which this movie is old-fashioned and also beautiful is like the connection of sexuality with emotion.
Yes.
The rain falls at the end of the movie, and then the final scene that was shot and then actually cut out of the movie is of Sister Clodagh crying. So there's this connection between the rain and like a release of emotion. So Sister Clodagh is crying. She's back with the mother that gave her the assignment. She's sobbing uncontrollably. I guess the only thing that remains of that scene is the script, though Cardiff, the cinematographer, said it was basically his favorite thing he did in the film, and he's really upset that it was cut. But apparently it was cut because he had this idea for this close-up shot of the rain, and Powell loved that so much, they decided, this could end the movie. And Cardiff had shot, like, there's a photograph of them shooting the final scene. There's like rain coming down the windows, and they're shooting inside, and there's the rain coming down. Talk about like emotional lighting, the rain coming down through the window on the faces, and she's sobbing. And then the mother superior says, I'm so happy that, basically tells Sister Clodagh, I'm so happy to see this side of you. I didn't know if this side of you existed, which is, again, a little Catholic.
It is.
I'm so happy that you've been brought to your knees and are sobbing uncontrollably. But also it's a release of emotion, which I think is a really beautiful idea. And maybe, what you're saying about Catholicism. Yeah, you're supposed to have a lot of sex and have a lot of babies, but repress all emotions. And actually sexuality and emotionality are kind of connected.
So interconnected. And as much as people like pretend that they aren't, it's hard to deny. And I think a lot of people battle that up and try to ignore one or the other. And it's kind of, at some point, it has to be reckoned with. And this movie is interesting because it talks about that kind of explosion again through like the rain. The rain really signifies that, like, you keep that pent up for so long, that emotion or that sensuality, all depending on what part you are or are not embracing, is going to come out at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a tragedy, not only because Sister Ruth dies, but because Mr. Dean and Sister Clodagh don't get together.
Nope.
There's tears and there's rain, and that's as good as it gets.
The line, "Can you please look after the grave," is like, how is that a romantic line?
Yeah.
It works though, right? It just really works in that scene.
I think it's romantic because if you think about it as the side of herself, the emotional side of herself that's died.
True.
And watching over the grave, it's
almost symbolic of that.
Yeah, it's very Wuthering Heights, actually.
In a way that Wuthering Heights was not.
Wuthering Heights.
This was, I said to my wife during this final scene, I said, this is what Wuthering Heights the movie did not have, is the sense of like tension and longing and real emotional eroticism. It was so focused on being, I guess, extreme about it or sensational, but also focusing on the sort of like, I guess, implications of bondage. We don't need to get into
You're just a hater.
I'm not a.
I was.
No,
I haven't seen it yet. I can't comment. I haven't seen it yet.
I'm not saying I have a complicated take on the movie, but I really felt like it didn't understand the fundamental themes.
It was fan fiction, and I think now they're leaning into that. They very much pushed back at that with marketing, and now that there has been huge hatred for the take, right? The whole like, well, Wuthering Heights is in quotations because. Right. Like
it's an interesting film to see and talk about. I will leave it at that because we don't have enough time to talk about it.
I think it should be included at some point, and I call dibs.
It's on the list. We're going to do Wuthering Heights. I'm calling it now. We are doing Wuthering Heights. It's morally offensive.
The point is the ending of Black Narcissus is hot, and everybody should watch it.
Yep. Definitely hot. Holding hands in the rain and leaving the person.
That's how you end up with babies.
Holding hands in the rain.
Yeah.
I just like, as a filmmaker, I just have to say, when they cut to the close up of Mr. Dean on the pony and he's no longer on the pony and no longer kind of bobbing up and down, that really, really bothers me. But, continuity, people.
Well, listen, let me ask you, Dalila, because I know you have to jet out of here. What did you think of this movie, and does it get your imprimatur? Does it get your papal seal of approval?
It gets my papal seal of approval. This is a cinematic classic that everybody should see if you're interested in, any of these themes. If you're interested in lighting, color, cinematography, art design, the use of sound in movies, masterful flashbacks. It's a must
Tiny horses.
see. Also, Martin Scorsese's favorite film. I mean, come on, everybody needs to see this movie.
Yeah, Marty loves this movie so much. I can only imagine being at a party with him and not having seen this movie, and then he just starts convincing me to watch this movie.
Cisco, that's your in. Just
Cisco.
Go find him and
go find Marty. All right, Jess, does this movie get your imprimatur? Would you recommend it to someone?
It does. I mean, even if your background isn't in film, but you love like art history, like I love both, but or also you're someone who's into like practical effects and special effects. I mean, this is a fantastic one to watch and read about and watch interviews on the making of it. It's fantastic.
Or if you like killer nuns.
I mean, this is also, the gateway, right?
This is the gateway drug of nunsploitation.
Yes.
That or just growing up Catholic. I mean, there's that too.
Yeah.
And I give this my imprimatur. I love this movie. I've made the mistake of blindly showing this to people before without a lot of like background. And so I've avoided doing that now. But like, I like this movie a lot. It's got a lot of things that have aged poorly, but so have a lot of films from the mid 40s. So
Films from 20 years ago have aged poorly. I mean, come on. Historical context matters.
I watched Zoolander recently, and I totally forgot that it has brown and blackface in it.
Oh, yeah.
And I had no idea.
But it was controversial even at the time that they were, right? Like,
but out of my mind as it gets cut out of the TV edits. Anyway, the point is, this film is great. It's influential. It holds up in a lot of ways. It still looks incredibly modern.
Yes.
And it's a feat of like cinematic engineering and filmmaking and storytelling. And the themes are universal. Like the real central themes of this movie are the thing that keep bringing me back of just thinking about things that are very important to me as somebody who grew up Catholic.
Right.
So we think the Catholics were not right on this one. I think they were a little misguided on the reviews.
I think if you're watching with a normal mindset and listening to what the creators themselves are saying, you're viewing it as a look at the human psyche and a universal experience, not as a degradation of the church.
Well, listen, Dalila, in the last episode, I know we talked a little bit about your projects, but I'd love to know about what you have going on and also let people know how they can find you.
I had my first feature released online in December, and everybody can see it on whatever platform you choose, Amazon, Apple, Vudu. It's called No More Time, and it's a thriller, sort of an environmental thriller inspired by the pandemic times. And then my latest project is a short film called Beauty Night. I just finished it. I'm just sending it out to festivals, so hopefully it'll be available to see in festivals in the next year. It is a horror short about puberty and a 12-year-old girl who learns about all the things she needs to do to be a woman in a spa night with her mom.
I have to ask, have you submitted to Milwaukee at all? The Milwaukee Film Festival?
No, not yet.
Okay. Just throwing it out there.
I'll put it on my list.
Yes. Because I know Milwaukee Film follows us, so maybe,
I'll put it on my list. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Dalila Droege. Hopefully you guys will spell my name. It's impossible to remember.
You're on IMDb, so.
I'm on IMDb. If you watch No More Time, rate us, review us on IMDb. You can find out more about my latest project, Beauty Night, on Instagram at beautynight_film.
All right, Dalila, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been awesome. It's so great to reconnect with you.
Amazing. So this was super, super fun. And I look forward to the t-shirt that says suffer, die, and be buried.
I mean,
me too.
Yes, I think it needs to happen.
We got to make it happen after I get the Filthy Habits shirts done. So
absolutely. It was fantastic to meet you. And thank you so much for your time. And I wish you the best of luck at the festivals.
Thank you so much. Great to meet you, Jess.
Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of Morally Offensive. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. This absolutely helps us gain traction and raise awareness about the show. Join us next time when we will be taking a short break from our Filthy Habit series for a brief sojourn in the Holy Land for Holy Week. We are going back to the 1970s to hang out with a bunch of singing hippies in the desert and Norman Jewison. Kevin and I are doing our vocal warm-ups now to get ready for our long-awaited episode on the highly controversial musical Jesus Christ Superstar. Thanks again for listening, and as always,
go and sin no more.
Soon, a young general, a local prince doused in a pungent perfume called Black Narcissus, introduces temptation to the coven. The coven.
Freudian slip.
Try it again.